I am not going to lie. This is probably the session that I've been the most excited for at the Virtual Insight Summit this year, which is saying something because I've been pretty ecstatic about all the sessions that we've already had and the ones that are coming up. But if you've heard me talking about it, this is something that is really near and dear to my heart. I am joined today by Khalil Vicioso and Melissa Gonzalez. And in our planning sessions, we've uncovered so many things that either I knew on some level, but hadn't fully synthesized or really hadn't put my finger on at all. They've been doing this work on diversity and inclusion for a really long time within the research industry. And I think that you are going to learn so much from them. I know I have, and really 35 minutes is not enough time to do this justice. But before we hear from them, I do want to say thank you to everyone who is listening in right now. Just by registering for the event, you've already started to help us do some of this really important work that we're going to talk about. We are donating $1 to Insights in Color and $1 to Color of Research, which are the two organizations that are represented here today, for each registration that we got. And we are at well over $4,000 right now, which is something. So obviously, money can't do all the work, but it's an important piece of the foundation in making a difference. So thank you for being a part of that. And on top of that, thank you so much to the 100 of you and counting who are on the line right now, joining us for this probably slightly challenging conversation. I know that this work isn't always comfortable, but it's really, really important. So thank you to all of you for being here, and especially thank you to Insights in Color and CORE for the work that you do and being partners with us for this event. Both Insights in Color and CORE were founded to address a glaring lack of diversity in the insights industry. And Melissa and Khalil, I'd love for you to share a bit about who you are, why you're here today, how you got involved with spearheading this journey to push diversity initiatives ahead. Melissa, why don't you go first?
Sure. So hello, everyone. Thank you all for joining. My name is Melissa Gonzalez, and I'm one of the co-founders and a director of Color of Research. Now, Color of Research is not for profit, and we sort of work out of the UK, but our reach is global. And the reason it was started, I think, as Ariel very eloquently said, was because of the lack of visible diversity in the insights industry. We work across, as insight professionals, we work across the world, across markets, and we serve people who don't just look the same. But for some reason, the people who do the work and provide these insights look the same. And some of us are outsiders in this vast industry. And for that reason, a group of 8 of us got together and decided to challenge the status quo and do something about it. And that's how it came about. We're about a year old now, and we've got a wonderful website. So please go on and have a look and see all the work that we do. I don't want to spend too much time kind of talking about it, but please go on and have a look and get in touch with us after the session if you'd like to further the conversation. Khalil, I'll pass over to you.
Thank you. So Insights in Color founded refounded initially. Whitney Dunlap Fowler, who is the founder, started it many years ago as an effort to help with recruiting at an agency where she was working, and then restarted it last year. The initiative just gained a lot of momentum given everything that was going on socially. That's not surprising. We watched to see if the momentum was going to stick, and it has. People continue to have interest, and that's really heartening. So the focus for Insights in Color is really disruption and change in the market industry from the inside out. There's a number of task forces. I'm on the education one, where I co-lead, and our focus there is on bringing in more students, creating awareness of market research, that it even exists, and what that means, and the role that they can play, and the role that market research plays in developing all of the products and brands and campaigns that make an impact on their lives. And we also have a task force that's focused on careers, that works with helping brands to strengthen their pipeline of diverse talent and helps diverse talent to find those opportunities to be able to get their career started or to move their careers further along. So that's Insights and Color, and we're just excited about the growth and the interest and how much people seem committed to keep this moving. And then my other hat is I run a consultancy called Tiny Hat that is focused on multicultural, on cultural insights, and on sort of taking a lived experience approach to doing research with brands so they can have a more positive impact.
Amazing. Well, great to meet both of you. Khalil, I wanted to put my first question to you. Both you and Melissa have identified a few key areas in which research is lacking some of this important conversation and action on diversity. Can you speak a little bit to what the result of this is?
Sure. We in our discussions with this, we've landed on this idea that it's really missed opportunities, and these are opportunities that have impacts on the bottom lines. And so I want to emphasize plural bottom lines here. But missing these opportunities impacts brands' bottom lines. And we've sort of laddered them as, number one, the opportunity to better reflect the world that exists versus the world that existed 10 years ago or the world that existed 5 years ago. But reflecting the world as it is today with all its diversity and complexity. Number two, it is missing the opportunity that comes from innovation that is born from that exchange of sensibilities, of different cultural lived experiences. And that's something that Insight can help with. But if you don't have that inside the brand, inside the company, you're missing a lot of that conversation, that exchange of sensibilities that can happen around the table or around water cooler, around wherever, that leads to more innovation, better breakthrough innovation, and more interesting products, offers, and communications. And finally, it's missing the opportunity to take a leadership role when it comes to diversity and inclusion, and sort of moving past what is often considered woke washing to something that feels more committed. So those are the high level, those are the three missed opportunities, and those have a direct impact on bottom lines.
Yeah, Melissa, do you want to sort of chime in there as well?
No, yeah, I completely agree. And this is something that we talked exclusively around because I think sometimes when we talk about diversity and inclusion, it sounds really wishy-washy because people often struggle to pin what the actual effect of these are. And I think Khalil very, very kindly pointed out three sort of areas. And I want to sort of diversify those and kind of bring it down to what are the issues that arise because of these missed opportunities. So when you start off and you think about things like, having accurate sort of representation in your marketplace, the issue arising from not having that is, internally within your organization, within the research you do, and thus the impact on brands is you miss very clear blind spots that can only be filled by authentic representation. So whether it's execution of research, whether it's the design of the research, whether it's interpretation of the results, some of the really common examples of this is often assuming that you can run research any time of the day, any place in the world, because it works for you in a very Anglo-Saxon way. But there's right now, as we are talking, it's Ramadan. So, it's one of the world's fastest growing religion, and observant people who follow this religion will be fasting from dawn to dusk. So asking them to take part in really complex research and be active and proactive is, without keeping into mind that there's iftar at the end of the day, and keeping these timings in mind can really affect it. So having accurate representation within your company is really essential to kind of have these blind spots covered. And then Khalil, you also mentioned this sort of innovation that comes between the interchange of sensibilities. And I think that's a really, really important one. And we often see this in executions of brands and products. When you look at a product and you realize as a person of color, this has been pretty much a group of, homogenous group of white people potentially looking at a product and saying, okay, this is what Black people will like. It can often lead to tone deaf campaigns. Another good example for this, and I often cite this, is again something related to Ramadan. Was a few years ago, one of the big supermarket chains in the UK had Ramadan offers, and they had a box of crisps or chips, as you call in the US, that were bacon flavored. And that's a glaring missed sort of blind spot where if you're Muslim and you're celebrating Ramadan, you wouldn't buy that. So I guess to even point out something that simple for somebody who probably would be aware of it, and having them in your teams automatically creates better innovation pipelines, better thinking, and better thought processes. And then finally, the third point about sort of missed opportunities, I think is very much representation when it comes to being visible representations. I always say is, you can't be what you can't see. And if you can't see people of color, people of different faiths, people who wear their culture outwardly, if you can't see that, the lack of visibility of that means that people who are of that persuasion, or whether it's religion, whether it's race, whether it's sexuality, the intersectionality of all of it, if you don't see it, you can't aspire to be it. And I think that's really, really important. Often we get questions saying that surely if you're good enough, you should be able to do it, surely. And this is not a question of meritocracy. This is more a question about opportunity, and opportunity when it's visible, and also a question of being able to kind of forecast your life and see where you'll be. If you don't see it, you can't be it. So very important to have people of color, of visible diversity in leadership roles, because that also then trickles down to your, to your bottom line, because essentially the whole conversation in the room changes because it has a different nuance. So I think these are the sort of issues we felt from the missed opportunities that would arise when you don't have, a diverse workforce, essentially.
Yeah, there are important benefits that brands get from ensuring that they have this diversity. There was a recent 2018 BCG study that showed that diversity increases the bottom line, the absolute revenue bottom line, right, which has an impact on shareholder bottom line. So that's one of the bottom lines that we were referring to, is that it's there. This is something that shows up in the research. So it's beyond a desire to do good, which should be a driving, an important motivator. There is also just the desire to do well when it comes to revenue and shareholder goals, and that's fine. And that is impacted by having diverse leadership. You do increase the bottom line, and you do it because the type of innovation, the quality of the innovation goes up and is better, and as a result, the bottom line improves because of that. So what does it give you? It gives you the opportunity to reflect strategies that reflect the marketplace as it is, and to do it more intuitively. So yes, you're still leveraging all these insights and going out to the world and talking to people, but now within your organization, you have a more intuitive ability to interpret what you're learning, to add on to it, to enrich it, to really digest what it is that you're hearing from people in the world. You've sort of built that into your organization. You also now have this ability to develop more breakthrough communications and offer and innovation. And this BCG study is tying that directly to the bottom line. So now you've got this you've become a more creative organization by making the investment in recruiting talented people of color to leadership roles and to entry-level roles, and just really making that part of the DNA of your organization. And then you become a stronger employer brand, because if you've moved to really being committed to bringing voices into your organization as part of your business strategy, as part of the way you operate, as part of your DNA, people will see that. People will talk about it. People will recommend your organization. It becomes a much more attractive place for people to work. If you have people, and Melissa was speaking to this, if you have people in leadership roles who look like me as a junior person, well, I feel like I have a future here now. I feel like I can get somewhere in this organization because I see leaders in this organization who are just like me and who maybe their story is similar to mine. So now I can see myself in a mirror, so to speak, and I know that I can achieve here. I don't have to go somewhere else to try to find those opportunities. So again, that is the other bottom line, which is that social impact, which is also an increasingly an important part of brand's ability to survive. I mean, we see it all the time, right? You as a brand can no longer sit aside or remain neutral because of where we are culturally, because where we are socially. It's now a conversation that involves everybody, and you're called on to do that. Particularly younger generations are sort of demanding that if you're going to be in the marketplace, if you're going to be in my home, I expect you to have a position on what's going on in the world that I live in. So that's really been a major shift, I think, for brands. Personally, I think a very positive shift in the way that we start to think about what it means to do business and what it means to be a brand in the world today. So those are, for us, the three sort of opportunities that are being missed currently, is that accurate representation, the innovation that's born from the exchange of life experiences, that being able to take a leadership role that will lead to better strategy because it's rooted in the real world, that leads to better, more interesting, creativity, and that makes you a stronger employer brand and takes you from woke washing to actually being a demonstrated ally, to being part of the shift that's going on.
Yeah, I agree to that as well. And I think we need to kind of emphasize this point of having, a business case. So there is a moral case. There's an absolute moral case to speak up when any injustice is done, to ensure that when you speak up, it comes from an authentic place. And that can be done by ensuring that what you are inside is reflected on the outside. So if you're a brand that does not have diversity, then you have to think about what you need to do, and your comms need to reflect that. So we're never going to be perfect, but this is a journey, and every company, every brand, every employer has the opportunity to sort of acknowledge and educate themselves to say, right, we've got X sorted, but we need to work on Y and Z, and this is how we're going to do. And even openly communicating that is takes you leaps and bounds forward as a brand. An example that I often give is in the UK, there is a really small niche sort of research consultancy called the Future Laboratory. And I'm not affiliated by them. I used to be their client a long time ago, but I'm not affiliated with them. And they've very authentically said, this is an issue, we're going to address this, and this is how we're going to do it, and very, very openly acknowledged the problems in society and how they're going to take steps to actually change that. So I guess that authenticity is extremely important. I know this word gets thrown around so much, but there is such value in actually saying, this is who we are and this is what we're going to do. And then I think easily, whether it's hiring a D&I coach, whether it's sending employees onto trainings, whether it's funding grassroots education, whether it's trying to get new internships and young people of color into your organization, that's a really strong business case then. Because at the end of the day, when you have your social causes and your moral case in place, getting a business case is rather easy to do. So I would say it works both hands. And most importantly, I think it's authenticity. It's making sure whatever you say is coming from the right place. Don't just jump on the bandwagon, because this is a group, especially millennials and Gen Zs, are a group of people now that will be the biggest sort of consumers of your brands. They're also grown up in a generation where they're very, very quick to call out anything that's woke washing. They're very quick to call out. And we all know the trials by social media to be very, very careful and cautious of that. So I would say come from an authentic place, and then there's a better chance of you doing what you intend to do.
You touched upon, I've been sort of monitoring the chat while you guys have been talking, because I know you're talking and it's hard to do both at the same time, but there's a conversation going on in the chat right now about really where do you start if you're an employer who wants to bring on a more diverse talent pool and sort of hit on all of those pieces that you're bringing up that make it important. So I know both of your organizations have some initiatives in place, and there's some other initiatives out there that we've talked about in our planning sessions. And I'd love to hear if you have any words of wisdom to share about where people can start on this journey.
Sure. And I think this is not a novel problem, right? So your organization is not alone in trying to do this. So first of all, don't feel that, oh, we're the only ones who've got to do this. How do we do this? This is, this is a systemic problem across all industries. There is a reason why the FTSE 500, there are more men called Dave who are CEOs than women. There's a reason why that is an issue, right? Because for generations, only a certain type of person was allowed to progress. So keep that in mind before you start this journey, that it's not an easy journey and there's no quick fixes. I think that's really important. If you think there's a quick fix, you're not doing it right, because it's a grassroots movement. And then I think in terms, I can speak for Colour of Research, and obviously Khalil, please do speak for Insights of Colour. I would say that we have a jobs page on our website. We have a jobs board, and if you are somebody who's actively looking to recruit, get in touch with us. We're very happy to sort of post on a bulletin board. These are the sort of jobs available. There are companies who have gone very bold and have gone and said, the next person we hire is going to be a Black person. And we're going to do this in the most authentic manner, but we're going to hire somebody that actually will understand our consumers better, just because they are not thinking the same way. They don't have the same life experiences as the collective of us have. So it's also being brave. And then thirdly, not just targeting certain universities. So in the UK, there's a distinction between different universities. You've got your Redrick or your Russell Group universities, you've got your other universities, but actually going to universities that potentially have diverse talent, and looking into them and saying, you know what, going and talking to them and saying, this is what we offer and this is who we are and this is what you can do. I come from an Indian background, and a lot of the times, if there's many Indian researchers, we just fall into it because most of us have done, a different degree to what we work at, because we never knew we could do this. So it's a lot of us are accidental researchers in this community. So I would say those are the other things to do. And then I think finally, it's really, really important to acknowledge that it's going to take a while, and it's going to start slow, but you have to make an outward commitment and you have to keep to it. It's looking internally, reflecting and saying, here's the things we need to do, and then actually following through, because, it's not a fad. This is not going to go away. So you may as well start working towards it. Khalil, would you want to add anything about Insights in Colour?
Similarly, we do a lot of work with clients to help them with filling positions at different levels. And I think that's the other part of it, not to make it more complex, as Melissa was saying, but we're looking right now at sort of a dual issue. There is the right now issue where you need to bring in more leadership, and the talent is there. It's that a lot of people of color haven't had the opportunities to continue to move up in their career. So it's finding, really proactively looking for that talent and being connected with that talent. That's one of the things that happens through our job board. But the other issue is that entry level part. And that is where, to Melissa's point, it's really about reaching out to that diverse set of schools. Similar in the US, where you have some very top tier schools, and then you go to the community college level, for example. But you have diverse students more at state school level, more at community college level, more just how it's fallen out. And there's opportunity there to really reach out in a more proactive way, to bring those students into internship programs, to bring those students into those early entry level jobs. And there's a lot of hunger for that opportunity. And when they understand what market research is, there's kind of excitement about, like, oh, wow, I can be part of like these things that I'm really interested in, I'm excited about, as most of us who've fallen into the industry discover, like, oh, I can ask questions and be part of all this stuff that I like anyway. So there's real hunger for that. From a leadership perspective, when we do talk to people of color who are in leadership roles, when they see that brands are doing that, reaching out to students of color for their internship programs, for entry-level roles, that is an attractor for leaders. So in the same way that junior people see people in leadership roles and see, I can have a future here, leaders also see that investment in junior talent as a sign of, okay, you take this seriously. You really are committed to doing this. And that's an organization that I want to be part of, because a lot of the senior people that we speak to now are really starting to are looking through that lens of, are you serious? Are you really serious about doing this? Because I don't want, the people that are coming up behind me to have to go through the same struggles that I had to go through to be recognized. And so when they see that you're investing in doing that, that's a signal for them that you mean it. And so they want to be part of that. They can feed off of that energy. So I think that those are important ways to begin it. And just to emphasize Melissa's point, it's going to take some work, because we're finally addressing this, and it's taken some time to really give it focused energy, but it definitely pays off across multiple fronts. And there are organizations like CORE and Insights in Color that our reason to exist is to help address these issues in the insights industry.
I would also challenge the notion of having just university grads, right? Because a lot of the times I would question what I do as to how much of that, all of these skills that I've learned have been honed through academia and through university. So I'd also question that. And that's probably a little beside the point, but might also help us think to get more diverse talent is, do you actually need somebody who has a bachelor's or a master's degree? I mean, look at any job at the minute. The first question is a BSc or a BA or a whatever, a degree, a bachelor's degree. It's my question is why? Like, please help me understand, why does my bachelor's degree in biotechnology and pharmacology help me do qual research at the minute? It doesn't. So that's another thing I would put out there is to question that too. Ariel, are there any more questions I know we've got about 6 minutes.
We have about 6 minutes, and I do have another pretty big question. But Melissa, I love that last point. It's something I think about a lot. And I think even in a lot of circles I've run in, even not having a higher degree of education than a bachelor's degree at this point is almost like I'm one of my only friends from high school that doesn't have higher education now. And that really cuts out a whole subset of people who probably are insanely good talent. And that's a big shift in reframing and rethinking about what qualifies someone for a job and what would make them be a good worker and really feed into the culture, which actually kind of ties nicely into my next question, because we've talked a lot about sort of diversity on the surface, diversity that's visible. The next part of the workshop that we're going to go into is going to be a little bit more about bringing our whole selves to work and some of the aspects of diversity that are a little bit more invisible. So I'd love to just hear a little bit of your thoughts on that, because I know this is something that we've touched upon. And obviously diversity in education is a piece of that. Melissa, do you want to start?
Yeah, sure.
From you too.
Yeah, I think I'm probably not the most qualified person to answer the question about invisible diversity, but I will try. And I'd say that often having people be their most authentic selves. The one thing I love about the pandemic, and I'm going to say love, and it's a big word, is that we've been able to sort of harness our home life and kind of make it our work life, because there's no more division. That sort of enables people to see your whole self, whether you've got pets, whether you've got partners, whether you've got children, where you live, what you do, all of that. And that sort of really, it's like pieces in a jigsaw to form a person, to know who they are. And that's massively important when you are not, a cis, or when you're not in a heteronormative relationship. And that's one of the invisible diversities that I often say, that when you are when you're not a straight person, you have to come out nearly every day when you talk about your family. And that's, I think it's incredibly painful, because coming out itself is definitely, I think in some cases, an archaic notion, because what are you coming out of? But being able to be and being able to exist is a strong sort of is a strong push point for me. So actually, if your company enables people to be their whole selves, bring their whole selves to work, then you cover that basis. But obviously, Khalil, please add on to that.
Sure. I'll do it I'll enter 2 levels, partly coming from personal experience. There was a moment in my career where I did sort of come out in a much more public way. And it then became just sort of second nature to be out, in part because it liberated me. And I knew I brought more to the table when I was freer. And I think that that is the case across the board. The freer you are, the more free you are to be your full authentic self, the more you bring to the table, the less you're trying to censor what you say, the less you're sort of editing. And so that all that mental and emotional energy, now you can just commit to what you're doing because you've removed that, you've taken that tension off the table. And then also it's been important for me to do that because I just wanted to break ground for anybody who followed. So it's just a constant, like, I'm going to just keep coming out because that's just the way it is. And I've been around long enough that when I started coming out, it was not always comfortable. And there were definitely some situations where I think some of the people I worked with would have wished that I'd been a little more silent, but it was just not going to happen. So it's like, I just need to be who I am. And then the other one was later when I came out as somebody who has ADD and just being much more comfortable with, like, well, that's also a reality. And here's sort of some of what that means in terms of how I operate in the workplace, and both in terms of the pluses. And here's some of the things that I'll like work around or work through, or where I want extra support. And then here's all I bring to the table also as a result. I worked for a company where the CEO is dyslexic, and she always talked about how that was sort of her superpower when it came to her career. And over time, I started to see I started to think the same way about having ADD, sort of like the superpower I bring to the table, especially when I'm thinking about cultural analysis and synthesis and all of that. So I always loved the fact that she's led with that, and I made it a point of making that part of the conversation as well. So I think there's just so much untapped when people are freer, when you make an environment where there isn't judgment about it. You just sort of recognize there's neurodiversity, there's diversity of lifestyles, there's any number of things where people are different. Then you're bringing in more of that authentic humanity. And the benefit of that is just greater creativity and collaboration, and can only strengthen your organization.
Well, I think that's a really good note to end on. I wish that we could stay up here and talk about this forever. I've loved building this out with you guys and hearing your thoughts, and I highly recommend, I think you guys are both planning on staying for this workshop that we have right afterwards, and it's in the same meeting, so the chat will stay up. I recommend scrolling through. So many comments have come in, and definitely I think this is a very relatable and important conversation for everyone who's here. So thank you for taking the time to share your stories, and honestly, just for doing this work. It is so important. And I hope we can continue having these conversations, both with, the Zappi and VoxPopMe teams, and hopefully with the industry as a whole, because we clearly have a long ways to go, but there's people who care about helping us get there. So thank you so much.